Spigus, everyone. Thanks for joining me on the Kyokushin Shuffle. An almighty guest here. Everyone, I'd like to introduce you from the inner west of Sydney, Coach Anthony. Coach Anthony, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for joining me and my listeners on the Kyokushin Shuffle.
Yeah, my pleasure, Pat. Good to be here.
Awesome. So honored to have a chat to you. Followed you for such a long time. Martial arts enthusiast, obviously. And, you know, this side of our next 45 odd minutes is to obviously rehash a couple of your memorable moments but in the angle of that coaching and sharing as much as you possibly can, because I see opportunities in talking to someone like yourself is when we don't have the luxury of going to your academy, your school, and your students are privileged to hear so much of your wealth and knowledge. And it's just sharing a little bit as much as you can, but then obviously all of us appreciating that as well. So thanks again.
You're welcome.
So Coach, first things first, you know, when you would have started martial arts and then in that angle, I read that you were in Kempo karate and then you've dabbled into, you know, jits. Were you already in that nice, or were you feeling that etiquette way of how the teacher and the coach was going to influence you in some way at that age?
Oh, look, I was always a good student, you know, in school. You know, I played soccer for 10 years and I always listened to the coach. And, you know, in school I was, and uni, I made sure I listened. So it all started from there. So when I started martial arts and you had the whole hierarchy and discipline of martial arts of listening, it was just like an easy fit. I enjoyed it straight away, and it was great to finally start. I was a late starter, but you know, once I started, it was great.
Yeah. So in your late teens as such, and then, you know, you ventured in 97, correct my date there, to the States, and, you know, you would have been taught at a level here in Australia and then jumped to I guess an elite level, a higher standard under the coach down there, which you can reveal yourself, which you studied with for 2.5 years. What made you go overseas, and what made you either decide that specific coach or that specific teacher at the time?
I was doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in Sydney and under the Machado team.
Yes.
And the highest rank in Australia in 1997 was blue. Right. Well, it was in New South Wales, in Sydney. It was blue belt. I think there's a couple of purple belts in Melbourne.
Sure.
Or brown belts, purple, brown in Melbourne. But in Sydney, the highest rank was blue.
Wow.
And after training for about a year and a half, you know, my personality took over, and I had to learn it from the source. I wanted more. I was getting, you know, I enjoyed the BJJ and I was getting good at it, and I wanted to get better, and I wanted to learn directly from the source. So the head of Machado was Carlos, and he lived in Dallas, Texas.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I was at uni, and they were looking for occupational therapists to work in the States.
Oh, I see.
It was actually really easy to get a work visa back then.
Nice.
Because my job was in high demand. So I bit the bullet and got my visa, moved to Dallas, and started training with Carlos.
Wow. And again, you know, that transition happens, and then, you know, if you don't mind sharing with us, I guess the influence of, or the difference of what you felt within, you know, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, what was it? And then how did you get sucked into their rabbit hole, as they say, or were you really?
Oh, look, the main difference when you go to another gym, it's always about the people around you. So when I was in Sydney training, there was like 1 or 2 or 3 good training partners who were my level. But then when I went to Dallas, I was the bottom of the heap, and there was like 20, 30, 40 people who just kicked my butt.
Sure.
So that's kind of why I left, is just to get one, coaching from the black belt, and 2, just a lot more training partners, because as you know, in martial arts, you win or you learn from your losing, you learn from mistakes, you learn from tapping out. Indeed. And and you learn quickly when there's a lot of people better than you.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, you have to have a goal and a plan and make sure that you're improving yourself. So it was great. It was very hard back then. It was 1997, 98. It was literally everything was allowed. Heel hooks were allowed in class. Yeah, right. Neck cranks, slamming,
shit,
anything. There was no. It was pretty tough.
And what was the angle that coach looked in for you? As you're progressing through, were you starting to specialize in something? Were you starting to, look towards MMA, or were you just progressing as you were and just?
No, I was just progressing through BJJ. I didn't even think about MMA. I was watching the UFC, of course, back then, but I never thought about fighting in the UFC then, because I just wanted to get better and better at BJJ. So I wasn't doing any striking at all back then. It was just literally BJJ every day.
Yeah.
And BJJ in a gi every day.
Sure. Yeah.
So that really, and I just wanted to just get better, win as many competitions as possible, and and just let the BJJ game flow.
So we in your time there, what were some of the highlights that you could share with us, if there were any, towards, was there an angle of you potentially staying there, or was it, no, I'm ready to come back home and do, what was the next step there?
On the expiry date on my visa in my passport, I had a 2.5 year work visa.
Beautiful.
So I knew I was going home. There's no chance of extension, because after about 2.5 years, the demand wasn't there anymore, because they had their own therapist there by that time. So I knew I was going home. There was no chance of extension. So I just made sure that I took advantage of every single training class, every single moment to get better and better. And there was a lot of highlights. I guess one highlight was representing the Machado team against the Gracie team.
Oh, wow.
That was great, because that was the first time the Gracies ever competed. I think it was 98 or 99. So it was like, so I had like one super fight, which I won, which was great. That was a big highlight. And then just, winning like competitions like, the Dallas Open and the Texas Open, and having my coach Carlos in the corner. That was, it was a great honor.
What was one of his, I guess, assets that you have brought into your own coaching in a way, or that you've enjoyed the most out of what he taught you?
One, he emphasizes the basics. That's number one. He's a very, I guess you call it, traditional BJJ game.
Sure.
And that's what, and so that's number one I took from him. Two, I love how he teaches. He doesn't teach you 50 moves in 1 hour. I just teach you one move, step by step. Then you go and practice it, and then you'll do a second move, and then so on.
Sure.
And number three, he was always open. He never. Every time I had a question, always was wanting to stay back and help me with my question. So I mimicked my coaching a lot after Carlos.
Oh, I appreciate you sharing that. And that was my angle there. Did you then mold into your own way, but we'll segue a little bit here. You would have come back to Australia. So I appreciate you sharing the US experience. And now you're back in Oz. What were in a level, in a Kohai angle, what level did you attain? Because then were you in a higher rank than expected coming back to Oz?
When I came back, I left a white belt and I came back a purple belt.
Unreal.
And at that stage, it was the highest rank competing in Australia. So there's no brown and black belts competing. And I think there was only a couple of brown and blacks in Sydney that came from overseas. They weren't homegrown.
Yeah, right.
Except for I think one. And so at that stage, I was almost the highest rank in Sydney.
Yeah.
So
Isn't
there's
that
only one above me. So I
Mm.
thought, and always wanted to teach. I always loved teaching. So pretty much as soon as I got back,
Yes.
I started teaching 1 day a week at a karate school, teaching
Cool.
BJJ school at IMC.
Yep.
But at the same time, I kept training at my original BJJ school,
I see.
of course, to keep my
Nice. Yeah.
training up, and then started teaching 1 day a week. And
Yes.
after about a year, I took opened up a church hall. So we went
Uh-huh.
from 1 day a week to 3 days a week,
Yep.
and then did that for about a year. And then after about a 1 year in church hall, I bit the bullet and
Mm-hmm.
signed the lease and got my first full-time academy.
Well done. Look at that. And I'm sure that influence of America in the States and Dallas would have encouraged you, and as you would have seen and learned what to do and how to go forward with it. Yeah. Coach, you get to Oz, and then all this is transitioning, and you're, I guess, the in respect, you're in that highest level. How were you it's not progressing, I guess, but how were you getting more information? Back then, when we think of it, late 90s, early 2000s, there was no YouTube. There was nothing to reference back to. In Kyokushin, we had books and had to look through things. How were you enthusiastic about what you were doing at that time?
I'm a big notes taker. So I kept a training diary the whole time I was there
Good call.
in Dallas, and I still keep a training diary now.
Yeah.
And just because you learn a move once doesn't mean you're a master at it. So I just went through my training notes for those 2.5 years,
Right.
organized it into a syllabus and a lesson plan for my own learning, not so much my shoes for my own, and just make sure they always keep getting better
Sure.
at those techniques, the ones I knew. It's not always about learning new techniques, it's learning about new details.
Yeah.
It's really the devil's in the details. That's where
Indeed.
the matches won and lost. It's not how many moves you know,
Right.
it's how many details you know of each move that will really make it work.
Good call. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, that's very fascinating, because when it gets to that type of level, as they say, where else are you getting more material? More material, but you've brought it back a little bit and given me a bit of an eye opener, and just going, hold on, you know enough, just polish up what you currently know and get better and refine that as well. Is that what you're saying?
So I was actually thankful for that bit of time to really practice what I learned and really get better at those techniques. And I still want. And the first 3 years back, I came back in 2000. But the first 3 years, 2001, 2, and 3, I actually went back twice a year. I went back to Carlos twice a year for 1 week. It was a big expense at that time for me, but I didn't think of it as expense. It's all
investment
regarding investment. It's an investment to your further education, and so I wasn't completely alone.
Right,
Plus,
right.
I still had training partners and my coach here in Sydney, so to bounce off ideas and work techniques. So I wasn't alone.
No, that's good, and that's good to see, because now you as you just cornered into the mid or early 2000s, where was the itch starting? What was starting? Was it your competition level, because you have an amazing record in competition, one of the best in Australia, and you're just getting it done? Where was this itch of? Was it more competition? Was it starting to? Was there an angle where someone tapped you on the shoulder, or a coach, or said, "Hey, where to from here?" Slash the MMA.
Oh, you mean how did I get into MMA?
Well, were you continuing on in competition, and then it was, hey, here's the next step? Were you seeing it as a next step or a challenge, or were you just seeing it as it's there, let's have a shot?
All three, I think.
Good.
It seemed like a natural progression to go from BJJ competition to MMA competition.
Okay.
So, but I did tell myself I didn't want to start MMA until I became a black belt.
Oh, right.
So I did only BJ, pretty much. When I came back to Australia, I did start striking again.
Sure.
So I started striking in 2000 and just competed in BJJ only.
Okay.
And then I did this, the states and nationals and Pan Pacs and worlds, and was successful.
Yeah.
But then as soon as I got I won a bronze medal at the Worlds in 2003.
Wow.
And then I went to Dallas a month after and was presented my black belt.
I see.
By Carlos. And then 6 months later, I'd made my MMA debut.
Wow.
So that's kind of, so I knew back early on, I wanted to get my black belt before competing MMA, because I knew as soon as you start competing MMA,
right,
my BJJ competition stopped.
Yeah.
So you can't do both. It's really hard to do both. So I didn't compete in BJJ pretty much till 3 years ago when I went to the Masters.
And you smashed that through. We'll get to that in a sec. So then, well done on that. And you get to this MMA bit, and then again on a coaching angle, did you have a specific coach at that time? Were you what was happening there? Because in early 2000, for the listeners, let's start to appreciate that now when we're watching MMA, UFC, there's, I've mentioned this before, nutrition, striking, grappling, performance, weight performance trainer, and so on and so on. Back then, and this is why it's an honor to chat to you, Coach, because when I followed you, it was raw, it was straight in there. Let's give it a shot, and how was that angle with a coach or no coach?
My coaches were my business partner at the time, and also all my training partners and my students.
Wow,
my students. And so I didn't go. There was no Jacksons or going to Thailand for a camp. Okay. So it was just trained pretty much within my own club. But even back then, I did it properly. Like I was made sure that I did BJJ at least twice a week. I did wrestling twice a week. I did striking twice a week. I did my sparring twice a week, and then made sure I was running 3 times a week and did some light weights 2 times a week. So I was actually training back then like they are today. Yeah. I just didn't have the support. I didn't have a nutrition coach. I didn't have a strength and conditioning coach. I didn't have a wrestling coach. I didn't have I did have a separate coach for each. I had a separate striking coach I went to. I had a wrestling coach, but there wasn't just one overall MMA coach, which kind of put it. I guess I did that myself.
Yeah.
Putting it all together. I went out and chose my coaches, and then I went out and invited people to my gym as well to help me spar as well.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how it worked back then.
Yeah, no, I appreciate sharing that. That's how I saw it as well. I could angle it in how you were progressing and doing so well. And then, when you had your wins, and the game plan and the strategy and of the wins came off, but then there was the losses in respect of, when they didn't come off. How were you afterwards as a professional fighter, sharing with us how you progressed after a win or a loss? Does that make sense? So when you won, were you like, okay, cool, back to the drawing board? And when you lost, were you cool, let's go back to the drawing board?
Yes to both. So definitely after a win or loss, you take your week off. You have a week off, but the only difference is in the week off, when you win, you celebrate. And then when you lose, you're depressed and you just don't want to talk to anyone and you just sit in your room. And that's very normal. There's nothing wrong with that. That's all actually, you should do that.
Yeah.
Okay, you lost. But you can't stay upset. So once you've had your little mourning period, you've cried enough and been depressed enough for a few days after your loss. Well, time to get back on the horse. You just got to get back on the horse and just do it again. Go back to the drawing board. like you said, and
Yeah.
fix up any mistakes and just keep going.
Were you, because you would get your opponent announced and then you would have 8 weeks, 12 weeks, etc. in advance. Sometimes, for example, when you got the call up against Crow Cop, you can't really study or, go through that. But those preparation time prior to, from a strategy level in seeing the fighter and so forth, was that something that you invested a fair bit of time in, or were you just more about you?
Not yeah, all about me.
Awesome.
I wasn't a big video watcher, which
Uh-huh.
means I didn't obsess over their videos.
Mm,
I'd find their videos, watch it once, maybe twice at the start of the camp, write in a plan, and don't watch anymore.
right.
Whereas some fighters are kind of the opposite. They want to keep
Yeah.
watching every session or every week. It's just too much. From my opinion, that's my opinion. I'm not saying it's wrong.
No.
That was my opinion. And then I just went all in on my strengths. So my strength is to keep safe when I'm standing, close the gap, clinch, take them down, ground and pound, choke them out. So I just make sure I always got better at that, at all those aspects of my own game. It doesn't matter who was in front of me. It doesn't matter if a top striker was in front of me. It doesn't matter if it's top grappler. It doesn't matter if it's top ref. It doesn't matter. Like, my game was the same. Like, if the knockout comes, sometimes the knockout comes. Like with one of my wins, like he came rushing in. I hit him with a straight right, and he went down. If it comes, that's no problem. I'll take the knockout victory.
Yes.
But my goal, even for that match, he was a top grappler. My goal was to close the gap, take him down.
Yeah. That's good. I like you sharing that, because you were focused on what you were attaining and what working so hard towards, and what he brought had to be better than what you were, bringing as well, what you were working on. So when you would finish a bout, or even in jiu-jitsu and in your MMA experience, would you analyze? Would you have a look at what you did? Would you spend time going through how that happened and how that didn't happen?
Yes, but again, I wouldn't dwell on it. I'd watch it once or twice or 3 times, even the wins and the losses, and take my notes and say, yeah, I did this great. Need to work on this, and that's it. I don't need to. Like I said, I wasn't a big video watcher of my opponents before the match, or even my matches afterwards as well. But just watch it once or twice, take some good notes, and drill from there.
Good reminder. How did you go with injuries in between all of this? Even in your jiu-jitsu career and all the way up into your MMA career, your injury side of things, were you all okay?
My injuries, I had a number of injuries. I think maybe 3 UFC matches I pulled out of 3 UFC matches due to injury. But most of it, I don't think, not once in MMA did I ever get injured during the match.
Yeah, right.
When I say injured, it means I'm not talking about cuts and bruises and stitches.
No. Yeah.
I'm talking about broken arms or dislocated shoulders or knees. Yeah. Not once did I ever get injured in a match. Wow. I always got injured at training. Because my goal for training is you train hard, you fight easy. The training has to be hard.
Right on.
Doesn't mean I try and take everyone's head off every match, or they try and take my head off. No, it just means constantly trying to do your A game every time. Not just playing tip and tap and I'll try this. No, just like constant trying to implement my game, my will on my opponent during training. And sometimes, I go one way, he goes the other way, my foot gets stuck, and I have a knee injury, and then but that happens.
Coach, how are you forwarding this on to your students of the last, however many years? What are some of the angles here? You know, is that one of the things that you reinforce with your students, that they, even though, you know, we've got all the other students to have a duty of care of, but there's elite guys that are, and girls that are doing their A game, and, you know, is that what you encourage to this day still?
Yeah, yeah. It should always, even in life, like focus on what you're good at, focus on what you're good at, and get that even better. And of course, you've got to look at the weaknesses and fix those, but don't spend 80% of the time on your weaknesses. Spend 80% of your time on your strengths and get that even better, and then only, you know, spend 20% on your weaknesses.
Well, good nugget there. Thanks. So that's good for everyone. Good reminder, isn't it? You know, because how do you go? And because you're still competing, coach, which is amazing. Or of what I've seen and read, and you've successfully won. How do you go against your students? Because the saying of some of the other coaches that I've spoken to is, if some of the students aren't beating me in a way, you know, beating in competition level or whatever's happening, well, then that means we got a couple of questions. How are you going with that? You're still winning and competing.
Well, thankfully, a lot of my students, they beat me now in you know, striking, wrestling, and BJJ. So I'm kind of very happy with that, because, you know, as a coach, it's your best and worst day when a student passes you. Okay, because you know, you've taught them everything you know, and they're able to beat you, but at the same time, maybe they don't need you as much anymore because they can beat you now. Because so it's a little bit of fine line, but I'm hoping another 100 students beat me in the near future. But, and obviously, I'm not making any excuses. Like, obviously, I am getting a little bit older and a little bit slower, but I still try and use my hippo weight as much as possible.
There you go. Yeah, I was going to
say. But you know, I want to stay competitive. I want to stay competitive with my students, and
where's that drive come from, coach? Where does that drive come from in you continuing to be still, you know, in that competitive mode and mindset? Is it just all the
look, once a competitor, always a competitor. Once a fighter, always a fighter. That's why you see some fighters, they come back out of retirement because they just miss it so bad, but they shouldn't come back because it's too hard to compete against someone half your age and twice your speed and twice your strength. It's just a bit too hard. That's why I've only come back to the masters. So when I compete against people my age and my weight. It's very hard. I'm not saying I'll get, you know, I can still do well against people, but it's going to be a lot harder against people like the younger ones.
Yeah. You know, with that being said, what is some of the attention in your academy, in your gym? And I'll put details for everyone. We'll say it later where it is. But what is the attention that you're seeing, or probably the best word is the direction of where students are heading with BJ? You know, your academy has a lot of different angles of doing things. Are you seeing more MMA students come in to be taught by you, more jits? Where are you seeing it going?
You know, 80% of my students just come in to do some training. They learn skills, want to get fit, meet some people, meet some cool people, and they don't want to compete. So, you know, 80% of my students and it doesn't matter if they choose BJJ, Thai kickboxing, or MMA. And then the other 20%, they want to take it a little bit further and compete. But because I specialize in BJJ and Thai kickboxing, that's my two biggest programs.
Okay.
I actually don't have a beginner MMA program. So you've got to grade to a certain level in BJJ and grade to a certain level in Thai kickboxing before I let you start my MMA classes. It's only after 3 or 6 months training, so you don't have to train for years or anything to join my MMA program. Just 3 to 6 months. So pretty much to answer your question, all the calls I get is for, still most of it is for either just do BJJ or just do Thai kickboxing or do a bit of both. And MMA is really, it's still for the, I don't have people just saying, oh, I want to do MMA.
Mm.
Okay.
Mm.
They say, I want to, they actually don't even know what MMA is, to tell the truth. I say, they tell me they want to do MMA. I say, okay. Well, if you want to do MMA with me,
Yes.
you have to do BJJ first, and then
yes.
Thai kickboxing first. And when you grade to a certain level,
Mm.
then you can do MMA with me, because that's where you learn how to put it all together. And I go, all right, cool. I didn't know it worked like that.
Sure. Well,
So
I angled it there because of how when you were coming through, and now what you are giving back to so many, and the angle of how many hats and I use the analogy that how many hats you wear. You know, you got, you're still fourth dan in BJJ, is that correct?
yep.
So you got that hat on, then you've got your, Muay Thai / kickboxing hat on. And then there is, like you said, an MMA hat on. How are you balancing that, and how's that been going for you since, with the progression of what's been going on around here in Australia?
I don't think there is no, I guess, not the word balance, but it's just the way it is. It's just, every day I teach BJJ, Thai kickboxing, and wrestling. And, at 6 o'clock, I'll put my wrestling gear on. 7 o'clock, I'll put my gear on. And 8 o'clock, I put my Thai kickboxing gear on. And
Mad.
It just seems like a natural, I don't think of it as any balance issue or anything like that. It's just, okay, it's time to learn BJJ now. Let's learn BJJ.
Yeah.
It's time to learn Thai kickboxing. Let's learn Thai kickboxing. Is that what I'm, is that what I'm, am I answering your question, or?
Yeah. What I've just thought in my head is you have the service. So this service, like an electrician needs to fix something here, but then you move into the next room and you can fix that other problem. And yours,
Sure.
The
That's
martial
it.
art coaches in a way go, right, I can cater, this is the service I can cater for here. And I think what you've just put an umbrella around in me talking to you is, here's the martial art coach, and there's many that have different things, and there's many that have 4 or 5 pillars, and that's it. That's the service, and you just switch on when it's ready.
And principle wise and rule wise, a lot of crossover. Like in terms of striking, wrestling, BJJ, there's a lot of crossover principle. Like, for example, everyone's goal is to get to the back. In striking, if you can cut an angle and get to someone's back, you always have advantage. Awesome. If you can get to someone's back in wrestling and BJJ, it's always going to be advantage. There's lots of crossover as well, which makes teaching a lot easier. So I don't say, okay, I always want to try and put it together. Even though someone just does BJJ with me or just does Thai kickboxing, there's still a lot of crossover. And I try to teach it like in a little bit of a holistic type MMA way.
Language, the language of it. So how do you, with what you've seen and where you've been and so on, how are you, I guess, again, venturing into educating yourself more? Now that we can't travel last year, for example, but are you affiliated with something in the States that's helping you, or are you just building your own nasty Perosh, type of way?
Great question. And what I've done this year, I've actually, is like, let's take BJJ for example. There's so many different little games in BJJ, and I have some students who are better at a particular game than me. So I asked them. I said, "Hey, would you like to teach class for a couple of weeks on a Monday? Teach every Monday for a couple of Mondays, and teach everyone your game."
Yeah.
So that's how, and then I actually learn from them.
Yeah.
As well.
I get you.
So I've done that a couple of times in the last 6 months, where I just ask a student to teach me their particular game.
Yeah.
And that way, at the same time, my students are learning, but also I'm learning as well.
Yeah. Yeah, because they have a different, I guess, view. Yeah, I'm going through the same example now. elite fighters in my dojo that are top guys, and I'm like, right, it's time for you to take an hour and build your own angle on it, and let others hear and see other words and other differences, and then that allows everyone to progress as well.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Coach, with what happened with COVID and so forth, and you do a lot of seminars and so forth. What are you seeing the direction? How was everything? I guess from your end, are you seeing an online progression with what's happening, or more seminars in the near future, and that continuing on as a learning?
Yeah,
and as a
I'm pretty sure. Like I was affected like everyone else. We were shut down for 3 months.
Yes.
I didn't do the online Zoom training. I didn't do that. So we were just completely shut down for 3 months. And then when we reopened, with the restrictions in place. But now pretty much 9 months down the track, as of today, I think, or today or Monday, the restrictions are back to almost normal, pretty much almost normal. So I'm just continuing as teach classes. I've already started teaching gradings and seminars in the Sydney and New South Wales area. I drive there.
Yeah, sure.
And probably in the next 3 to 6 months, start to travel interstate again and start teaching again. And at the same time, I still have a plan to get my syllabus and an online training platform as well.
Very good. And Coach, are you still involved in any way with, I guess, UFC in regards to are you helping coach fighters in getting into that, or have you got students that are going into other like a Bellators or ones and so forth? Are you involved?
Yeah, I have a team. I have a team of about 30 fighters.
Wow.
About 15 are amateur, 5 pro, and 10 are looking to have their first match in the next year or so.
Holy shit.
And probably out of those 30, I reckon a good, 3 to 5 who that have the potential to make the UFC and do really well in the UFC.
And how are you going controlling and managing, I guess, because they're all in, events or events to come. That's you in the corner, Coach? That's you?
Yeah,
like doing the hard yards?
Pre-COVID, pretty much the 3 years, like 3 years before COVID hit.
Yes.
It was about 40 out of 50 weekends I was away.
Ooh, wow.
For not just MMA, but BJJ competitions.
Yes.
MMA competitions, seminars. Wow. Well, it was quite busy.
Yeah.
So at the moment, events have started up again.
Yeah.
Again, but at the moment, the past 6 months is probably like one a month. I've been doing an event, one a month, maybe 2, but usually 1. But that's going to come. That's going to start up again soon. Again, the next 6 months is going to be busy again. Like on the weekends in terms of events, but that's just the way it is. I'm not complaining. It's like if anything,
that's a good thing. That's right. Oh, that's a fair commitment. I had 3 the other night, and I was spent. I had 3 guys competing, and my emotions and you feel like you're in the ring, you feel like you're on the mat, and so on. And how do you cope with that? What's a tip in respect of how you've got yourself to that level of emotions and drive with your fighter competing as well?
How I deal with my students, you mean?
Yeah, how do you internally with your emotions when your student is now fighting? It's not you in there.
Yeah, look, I'm actually more nervous for my student than I have ever been for my own self. Because for when I'm in the corner of my student, it's out of my control.
Indeed.
You see, they have to then do the job. It's when the gate shuts or the bell rings or whatever, it's up to them now. It doesn't matter how much I scream or don't scream in the corner. Doesn't matter. They're the ones that have to do it. But it's quite it's nerve wracking. And it's not always about I mean, don't get me. I was about to say it's not about winning or losing. Everyone wants to win. Don't get me wrong. You know, I wish my students could win every match, but they can't.
Of course,
you know, it just doesn't work like that. I just want them to do well every time. You know, I want them to do their best. If they do their absolute best and gave it all they had and left everything out in the center, and they still lost, well, then at least you can say, okay, well, he was just better than me on the day.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
But if you don't do your best and you lose, that's when it's hard. It's harder, you know, as a coach and a fighter, is when you don't do your best. Yeah. And you know you could have done better, but you just, you know, just didn't pull the trigger for some reason that day.
Yeah. And how are you as a coach? Are you the motivator pre-fight? Are you more strategic beforehand and let some of them be, or do you have a mixture of different ways?
No, I like to. I'm in the corner. I like to let them be. You know, I have a great team behind me. So you know, the other fighters, training partners, coaches, you know, they'll help. I'll wrap hands, for example. I'll wrap their hands, and then they'll warm up, and then I'll get my other striker, wrestler, grappler to help them warm up. And you know, I don't have to be with them and sit with them the whole time. So it's just I let them go. You know, they have their headphones on, and I go for a walk. They have a bit of a sleep, or let them do their own thing. And you know, half an hour before the fight, start to warm up again, get ready, and then just give them a few final words, and then it's up to them.
Wow. Beautiful. Well, I've got one more final one, and I appreciate your time, and we'll summarize it. What do you enjoy the most, this part of the journey, or the one that you were in when you were an elite, one of the best, you know, UFC fighters / jiu-jitsu champions? What one do you enjoy is the word the most?
Look, it's hard to say.
Of course, you know, that's why I'm just putting it
out. You know, when I was competing, I loved competing. You know, and it was all about me. But now I don't compete anymore. It's all about my students. So it really is. I never. It was hard to do both. You know, it's hard to do both at one time. It's hard to. Even though I was still coaching when I was competing. Yeah. It was still. I find myself being an even better coach now. Indeed. Because it's really all about them now. It's not about me. It's just about them. Yeah. So, but to answer your question, look, I love both. You know, I love
it's a tricky question. I just like.
But actually, to add something else, if I was able to compete again in the UFC tomorrow, yes, I would. Yes, for sure. Sign me up. But sign me up against someone like 48 years old, like me. Okay, not
Adesanya or someone like that.
No, not the ones that are there now.
Yeah. No, that's great. Coach, a lovely chat. 50 minutes, like I said, it's just flicked through like that. But in summary, thank you again. This was an honor because, again, I followed you a lot as an enthusiast, just as that UFC fan. And then from the jiu-jitsu angle, there's a lot of Kyokushin guys that are some of your students. And they've got a good angle there, and that's really cool. And that's why I was like, listen, this is going to be a great chance if I could get a chat. So I really, really appreciate it. And thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you. My pleasure.
Well, thanks everyone. I'll put Coach Anthony's details down there. He's in that inner west part of Sydney, New South Wales. What a big influence he's had to martial arts here in Australia, and what an honor it was to chat to you. Thank you so much, Coach. Have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you.
Amigos, everyone. Take care. See you at the next one. Us.